Hi, I'm Owen Taylor of Truelove Seeds, and this is a video about lifting and cleaning and dividing and storing your dahlia tubers or your Cocoxochitl tubers. One thing I didn't mention in the video is it's best to wait 120 days after planting before you lift your dahlias. We like to wait until after the first frost or the second frost because for some reason it inspires the eyes to develop on the tubers, which makes dividing easier. So enjoy the video. So Althea already went around the clump of the dahlia and lifted to kind of be careful not to break any tubers. Not just not to break the tubers, but to not like break their necks. So you want these to be not broken at their neck here, because once it breaks at the neck, that tuber won't survive the winter. And so anyway, we're washing them. As you can see back here, they're cleaned off, and then over the next week or two we'll divide the hundreds of plants that we have. And it's a weird use of water. It'd be great if we didn't have to use all this water, and if I was at home doing it myself, I wouldn't bother. I would just store them with soil on, but I just take the hose and try to get every little bit of dirt out. Not being too obsessive, but maybe I would stop there. Okay, all the dahlias are lifted. These are all the seedling dahlias from the last couple of years. I'm not going to bother washing them. We're still just increasing their population size. Here are all the rest. These are all the ones that we grow for cut flowers and for tuber sales. Been washed, and we'll start dividing them next week. Welcome back. We're here with bodacious dahlia, one of our favorites for a lot of reasons. It's truly bodacious. It's got this bodacious root mass. It's got big bodacious flowers.
How many times can you say bodacious, Owen?
Lots of times. It's got a bodacious flavor when you eat the tubers. Really, it's just very juicy and sweet when it comes to eating. We've got a pile of tubers here that we've already pulled off of bodacious that we will be eating because they had broken necks, which will not survive the winter if they're broken. And so we'll eat these. So if you look in close here, you can hopefully see there's an eye right there. There's eyes here. So all these crowns, like where the tuber is attached to the stems, that's where the eyes grow from, and you always have to have crown, and hopefully crown that's showing an eye. But a lot of times you can assume if there's a good amount of crown, there'll be an eye that buds in the spring. And so we're gonna make our cuts always keeping pieces of crown, hopefully with eyes attached to the tubers. If you have a tuber not attached to the crown, I don't want to sacrifice one, but here's an example. There's no crown up here. There's no way that this would grow, this tuber. So we're gonna compost that or eat it. So here's the tools we use. Mostly I use hand shears, hand pruners. We also use these finer flower snips. And this gets into smaller spaces and is good for smaller cuts. We also have this massive knife, which sometimes we'll do to put down in the middle of a very crowded stem to kind of shove it down in the middle and break apart the tuber in half so then we can get into it with other hand tools. And then finally I have this little knife, which sometimes comes in handy when this is overkill, to do the same thing, get in the middle and kind of snap open a very dense clump. So we're going to start with cutting off the stem. Gotta always keep everything labeled all the time. The next step is turning it over and cutting off any of the root tips. If you kind of come in close, I can show you what I'm doing here. Cutting off some of these roots. These little tiny roots just are not going to survive the winter. So let's get that bulk out of there. case they start to rot or something. They don't need to be part of the storage. And then we're gonna look for broken necks, I'm sorry. So like you see how this one is really loose. That means the neck is broken and that one is good for eating. This one's broken. It's a bit puny, but we may eat it anyway because we like bodacious. This one's broken. Do a little jiggle test. Broken. I'm just gonna say bodacious one more time. And then we're at the stage where we can start dividing. These are actually broken too. So those will be food. And then I'll jump back to these hand pruners. And here I might use the hollow stem to go in and make a cut. And then we've got a nice division there. Some people would make this into 3 divisions. Last year we did a bit more severe dividing than we'll do this year. This year we're going to leave these together and hope that with their powers combined they will survive the winter. Now this is a good spot to cut where there's a clear separation between 2 tubers and you can get crown on each division. So I'm going to cut down there. Let's see here. Okay, so then that's broken up a little more. You don't need that much. Here's another broken tuber. Now, this could be 4 divisions, it could be 2 divisions. This one's nice on its own, it's huge. Has a lot of food stored in there for the winter. And it's got enough crown here that there's bound to be an eye.
Is it bodacious?
It's a bodacious tuber in several ways. Thank you for adding that. Now this could, I'm just gonna keep this together even though it could easily be divided in 2. This one's got really separate from that one. I'm gonna let them hang out and be together and be a family. So that's pretty much it. And you can see we had this labeled from last year. That label stayed all through the season underground, and we're gonna get rid of that mother tuber. This one's broken. So I guess I can just kind of leave these 2 together. Try to get rid of some of this. We'll leave them together. They're a little awkward together, but love makes a family. Okay, so finally, we've divided our tubers and we have to store them. So this year we're trying a method, well, we're trying cinnamon. Zoe's dipping the dahlia divisions into cinnamon, a trick that I learned on the Facebook group Dahlias to help with controlling disease and viruses. Just like for humans, it helps dahlias stay well. And it gets us in the spirit of the season. And then Zoe is putting them in vermiculite, which we haven't done before. Last year we did peat moss. Previous years we didn't use anything besides paper bags, but this is another trick from the Dahlias Facebook group that I'm trying out this year. It's very expensive for a bag of vermiculite, and we're just gonna give it a shot, see if it helps them store better. And so we're dipping the cuts in there, and then I'm kind of layering them in these boxes with lids. And now we're using peat moss. I'm trying also, a lot of them we put in with vermiculite, like that. So we're trying a couple methods. Last year we did just peat moss. This year we're doing some that are just vermiculite, and we'll see what's best. You know, for the first 4 or 5 years I've worked with dahlias, we were just keeping them almost whole and actually not even cleaning the soil off of them, and putting them in paper bags and then into boxes labeled, and keeping them in a place that's, you know, ideally 40 to 50 degrees, and that doesn't freeze and doesn't get too warm, so that they don't die from freezing or start growing from being too warm. And that's, you know, sometimes that's a basement or a very cool room of the house or somewhere else that you can kind of be sure they're not going to freeze. Some people wrap them in extra blankets if it's a place that might get pretty cold, space heaters, etc. But you know, if you just have a few plants at home, you might want to just try storing them simply in paper bags and boxes. And of course, this depends entirely on what region you live in, how cold it gets, you know, how much humidity there is. You don't want them to dry out and shrivel, but you also don't want them to be so wet that they rot. So there's really a lot of factors that go into it. Here in Philadelphia area, we have found that, you know, they do okay in either of those methods that I've talked about. So with this, I'm going to add another layer, cover these entirely, and then keep layering more tubers. We don't want them to touch each other in case they start rotting. You don't want the rot to spread from tuber to tuber. So we'll kind of give them a little space between each one, make another layer so they're not touching, and just keep going till it's full. And then we label each box. These are all bodacious tubers. Alrighty, that's it. Okay, so I wanted to show real quick how I used to divide dahlias and store them when I worked at Roughwood Seed Collection. We didn't wash the plants. We kept some dirt on them, and we hardly divided them before the winter. So this is a big clump. Dividing it will do a couple things. It'll make it easier to deal with in the springtime, and it'll get rid of some of this extra dirt. Though I do think the soil helps moderate moisture and keep some moisture in, which is good. So I'm going to take this giant knife, shove it down in the middle. It's very difficult. Probably break some tubers and twist. So this looks like a grisly, morbid moment here. We've lost some tubers, but this is a nice division. You know, usually you'll get just one tuber or two tubers when you're buying tubers, but I wouldn't mind planting something like this. This will give you a nice hardy plant next year. This one's a bit large and unruly, so I might cut this one more time. But you get the gist. And then what I do is put them in a paper bag that's labeled with the variety name. And you know, I'll probably cut off this extra stem, that's not necessary. And then I'll fold it over and put this in a box of all the bags of tubers. And that's what we did. And we didn't have very much loss, and that's what works here in the Philadelphia area for us. So that's all. Okay, thank you for watching. Please comment or reach out to us if you have any suggestions. We're still new to this. It's only been 6 seasons with dahlias, so if you have any tips you want to share with us, great. We'd love to hear them. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll try to get back to you. Thank you so much.